Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of What It Talks About, where today we're going to be talking about my crisis. I'm just joking, partially. So today we're going to talk about time and how none of it makes sense anymore. So let's begin. The first thing is that in 1986, okay? So Isaac Newton had changed physics by introducing his three laws of motion. 5 years later is when the Salem witch trials began. Now, the technology was so advanced that we finally understand the laws of motion. Why are we still having witch hunts? Was this just a thing in the US, which is, I know, very common? So, the first photograph that was taken was in 1826, Joseph Burgundy's estate. That is the year Thomas Jefferson and John Adams both died. Fun fact, they both died on the same day, 4th of July 1826. John Jefferson passed away 5 hours before John, which makes John Adams' words really weird because he didn't know Jefferson had died, because his last words were Jefferson lives on. Yeah. Uh, so Thomas Edison died in 1931, and that was the year the Empire State Building was completed. President Hoover pressed a button that lit the tower lights to officially open the building. Coincidence? Probably. So, Hitler died in 1945. Gandhi died in 1948. Now, what Gandhi did was a bit heroic. I'm not talking about the other stuff. While that is heroic too, what he did during World War II, he wrote a letter to Hitler to ask him to rethink the war. So, Charlie Chaplin died in 1977. That was the same year that Annie Hall, one of the greatest movies in Hollywood, premiered the same year. And if you're wondering, no, I do not know what Annie Hall means. And let me just say, it's like so many things like happen together, and they are nonsensical. So, in 1971, people in Switzerland were granted the right to vote. At the same time, three people had landed on the moon after the launch of Apollo 14, which is one of the few times where America has actually done something good. One of the most popular musicians, Frank Sinatra, died in 1998. The same year, Seinfeld aired the same day Seinfeld's finale aired. So, theoretically, for the rest of his life, he could have watched the show Seinfeld, whichever sounds more right. So, Russian serfdom was a bad thing, and it existed until 1649. Well, it had existed since 1649. And the Tsar didn't abolish it for about 200 years. 1861. And then, shortly after that, the London Underground opened. So basically, the start of the subway, which just shows how far behind Russia was at the time. So, Albert Woodson was an army officer. He passed away in 1956 at the ripe young age of 106. So, he's old. He was born in 1850, which means when he was serving, he was 18. He was 18 in the Union Army. Or 10. No, actually, he was 10, which is slightly stiff. Okay, so The Wizard of Oz had premiered the same had premiered in the same year. In fact, only a month between the invasion of Poland by Germany. So you remember the Wright brothers, the great people who invented the plane? Well, they had invented it in 1903. 40 years later, the first atomic bomb was dropped in New Mexico. By the way, New Mexico, so sorry for all the holes punched in you. Orville was still alive. So, we get to the very deceptive things. Yeah. So, first off, uh, the last execution by guillotine in France happened in 1977. And that we know how to say like Germany was Germany was a bit bad in the 20th century, then same as Russia, but low key, France was also a bit regressive. Oh, regressive, that's the word. Regressive. Like A New Hope, which is like 46 years old now, I think, nearly 46, was is as long as the time that the guillotine was last used. So, uh, yeah, it was from the French Revolution, that time of terror and death, and to the guillotine, all that time. So, here's another one that is a shock. So, Oxford University, one of England's most prestigious ones, one of the most brand new, renowned, renewed, the whole world. It has existed in some form since 1096. Now, uh, it was recognized as a university, universitas at the time, in 1231. So, Aztec Empire, which is commonly thought of as the oldest modern empire in the world, was established in 1430. That is 199 years ago. 199 years after Oxford became a university. Now, Cleopatra lived closer to the invention of Snapchat than the construction of the Great Pyramids of Giza, which is very ironic because she's an ancient Egyptian, last ancient Egyptian monarch. So that must mean that it was a really big time period, just like maybe the Romans. Yeah. So he died in 30 BCE. So from today, that is 2053 years after. Either between 2053 and 2086 years after death, which means taking into account the average life span, she was probably born by, let's say, 2150 years ago. Great Pyramid of Giza was completed at 2560 BCE. That's the difference between the time of death and the completion of construction of 2,500 years. So, the Stegosaurus was older to the T Rex than the T Rex is older to us, and it isn't even a competition. So, the T Rex, which lived, let's say, average 70 million years ago, became a species about 74 million years after the death of a Stegosaurus. So that's a difference of 4 million years. That's something we can't even comprehend with our calendars. In fact, time hadn't even existed. Humans in that time difference wouldn't even be there. So the oldest person, the oldest living person, was born closer to the signing of the Constitution than today. And this one, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's 2023. Yeah. The oldest person, Emma Morano Maturzi, was born in 1899. That's 112 years after the signing of the Constitution in 1787. Before you say it was closer to something like 1793, or it should have been 1776. 1776 was the Declaration of Independence, and 1796 and 1793 was when they had elections to determine the first leader of the country. And she's 117 years old as of a couple days ago. So, the 10th president, John Taylor, has a grandchild who's still alive today. Now, this is very complex and it's very convoluted. So, John Tyler had children late into his late years, cause men never lose the ability to have babies. Good to say that because if I say anymore, I'm probably going to be demonetized. Even though I ain't monetized, that's how better it may be. So, Leon Tyler, he was born. He was born when Tyler was 63. So, take note of that. That is like in 19. That's when he is like shortly after presidency or just before. Anyway, Leon Tyler Jr. No, not Leon Tyler Jr. He was alive, but now he's dead. RIP. Harrison Ruffin Tyler is still alive today, and he's 92. Also, yeah, that Martizini, that was a couple of years ago. The oldest person probably changed. Okay, now let's continue. Uh, the mammoths were alive during the building of the Pyramid of Great Giza. So, yeah, as I told you, 2560. And that they were still there, but they were still roaming around. And 1,000 years, yes, 1,000 years later is when the final mammoth died out, which was 1560 BC. So, the Ottoman Empire was founded in the year 1300, right? Right? Stay with me, stay with me. And then it lasted until 1922. Now, originally it was going to last until 1920, but then there was the riots, the not signing of the Treaty of Severus, delaying to the Treaty of Lausanne. Yeah. Paramount Studios was founded in 1912, during the time of the First Balkan Wars. So, Betty White and Jimmy Carter are both older than sliced bread. So, Betty White was born in 1922, may she rest in peace, and Jimmy Carter, who is 98, was born in 1924. By contrast, the first commercially produced sliced loaves of bread weren't made until 1928. So, technically, you could say Betty White and Jimmy Carter were the best thing before sliced bread was the best thing since Betty White and Jimmy Carter. Because, and speaking of which, the oldest current president is still alive. He's an old man, but he's a good man. And he's an old man. Oh, and he also won the 2002 Nobel Peace Prize, which is making him one of the only president to have the honor after leaving office. The other people who got it, Teddy Roosevelt, Barack Obama, uh, Franklin Delano, Delano Roosevelt or Truman, they all got, and Wilson, they all got it in office. Right. It's enough rambling about stuff that isn't making my head spin. Yeah. So there was that 90 show, which is by the way I watched a 90 show that is surprisingly good. Although I say surprisingly because I have never actually watched that 70 show. And I think the concept is actually brilliant. Like you wait until the decade is over so that you have the most accurate knowledge so that you can recreate it in the most accurate way. So that 70s show was made in like 1998 to 2006. If that 90 shows was made with the same crap, it would have been made in 2017, 4 years earlier. So Next, we have Nintendo, which honestly is kind of old. The Eiffel Tower was inaugurated for the 1889 World's Fair. Nintendo started out as a company the same year, and now there are three people, all born in the same year. Anne Frank, Martin Luther King Jr., and Barbara Walters. Because of their times of their death, they were thought to live in very different eras. Like Martin Luther King Jr. was thought to live in the turbulent times of the 50s and 60s. Anne Frank was thought to be the unfortunate girl of World War II, and well, she was unfortunate in that. That's mostly what they recognize her for, World War II. And then Barbara Walters, probably like early, probably like 1990 to 1980s to 2000s. Yeah, they were all born in 1929. So uh, they had Luther King Jr. and uh, Frank and Frank not have had such a timely deaths, they could have lived to be the same age. Yeah. So 9/11 is closer to the fall of the Berlin Wall than today. So the Berlin Wall also closer to the collapse of the Soviet Union. The collapse of the Soviet Union was actually kind of recent at the time of 9/11, only 10 years. And the collapse of the Berlin Wall was 12 years. But today it has been 23 years since 9/11, or 22 years since 9/11. So it's nearly double the time. Now, here's something that is definitely going to cause a new depression. If the history of the universe was placed on a calendar year, humans would only start existing at 11:59 p.m. on December 31st. So we would only exist for like a minute, only a minute. So everything you see technically is in the past or the present. It takes 15 milliseconds for the visual information to process in your brain. By the time you actually see something, it's already happened in the past. So we're all living in the past, you guys. Certainly not gonna get depression after this video. Oh, here's some more. Here's some more. Octopi were older than a lot of what they were older than actually all dinosaurs. And they're one of the oldest living creatures that still exist today. I'm pretty sure the oldest. So, first octopi lived in lived 296 million years ago. That was even before the Triassic. And you know the T Rex, the most famous, it only started 65 million years ago ish. 70, 65. So 61 million people were still using pages in 1994. Now I have no idea what a page is. It's like those little BP devices. So yeah. So uh, Will Smith is now older than James Avery. If you don't know who James Avery is, he played Uncle Phil in The Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And I think he also played a bunch of other characters like uh, There's someone else. I don't know. Oh, he's dead. Well, may he rest in peace. I didn't know he was dead. Back to the thing. Yeah, Uncle Phil, James Avery. He's older than Uncle Phil was. Will Smith. He was older than when the Fresh Prince Bel Air was first aired. So Will was 50. Will is 50 years old today. Will Avery was 45 when the Fresh Prince of Bel Air premiered in 1990. Okay, so Suitcases with Wheels came after the first man on the moon was landed. First man on the moon went to the moon. First man went to the moon and landed on the moon. Yeah, which honestly doesn't make sense. So uh, yeah, I think that's all. That's all for the first podcast. Uh, I think that now you would. I hope that after this I have best your perception time. If I have done that, I have achieved my goal. So until the next round time.